"Hey ambulance boy." The voice was a low growl, like gravel churning in a cement mixer. "Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. Tell your siren to shut its mouth. Our president is trying to get some damn peace and quiet in there." The emergency lane of the sun-baked highway leading to San Miguel Medical Center had become a choke point, a trap. The flashing lights of our ambulance painted a desperate, strobing rhythm on the chrome and leather of the motorcycles blocking our path. 3 massive choppers, parked diagonally across the lane, formed an impenetrable wall of steel. Standing beside them were men who looked like they were carved from granite and bad intentions. They wore the colors of the Iron Vipers, MCA coiled serpent ready to strike. Inside the ambulance, the air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and fear. My fear, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was slowing, faltering. It was the soundtrack to my father's life fading away. "Sir, we can't get through," the young paramedic, barely 20, said, his voice trembling. "They won't move." I looked down at my father, Sam Riley, a man who had faced down Viet Cong in the jungles of the Mekong Delta, who had built a life with his bare hands, now lay helpless, his face a pale, ashen mask. An oxygen cannula was nestled beneath his nose, but each breath was a shallow, rattling struggle. A pulmonary crisis, the doctors had called it. His lungs, scarred from a lifetime of hard work and the lingering ghosts of Agent Orange, were finally giving up. I squeezed his hand. It felt cold, fragile, like a bird's wing. "Dad, hang on, just hang on, I'm right here." The lead biker, a mountain of a man with a scarred face and a tangled beard, sauntered over to the ambulance driver's window. He leaned down, his greasy hair hanging in his eyes, and tapped on the glass with a heavy, silver-ringed knuckle. "Didn't you hear me, hero?" he sneered. "Turn it off, we're conducting some important club business." The driver, a veteran with tired eyes, tried to reason with him. "Please, sir, we have a critical patient. He needs to get to the It's a matter of life and death." The biker laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that made my blood run cold. "Life and death," he mocked. "Sounds like his problem, not mine. Now are you gonna turn that noise off, or am I gonna have to reach in there and rip it out myself?" That was it. The line had been crossed. The calm, disciplined part of my mind, the part forged in the brutal crucible of badass and honed over a dozen deployments, it went quiet. Something older, more primal took over. I looked at the young paramedic. "Stay with him, do not leave his side." Before he could answer, I was moving. The side door of the ambulance slid open with a heavy thud. I stepped out onto the scorching asphalt. The shimmering heat off the pavement distorted the air, making the world wavy and unreal. The bikers turned as one. Their smirks were a mixture of surprise and amusement. I wasn't wearing a uniform. Just a plain t-shirt, worn jeans, and old work boots. To them, I was nobody. Just some guy caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The big one, the leader, swaggered towards me. He was easily 6'4", 300 pounds of muscle and menace. "Well, look what we have here," he rumbled, cracking his knuckles. "Someone's son wants to play the hero. You need to get back in the box, little man, before you get hurt." I stopped a few feet from him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't posture. I let the stillness do the talking. "You have 3 seconds, I said, my voice low and flat, devoid of any emotion, "to move your bikes and clear a path for this ambulance." He threw his head back and laughed, the sound booming across the highway. His buddies joined in. "Or what?" he finally gasped, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. "You gonna write me a sternly worded letter?" My eyes flickered from him to his 2 cronies fanning out to my sides and then back to him. I noted their stances, their hand positions, the way they carried their weight, sloppy, overconfident. The air grew heavy, the laughter died in their throats. They saw something in my eyes then, not fear, not anger. Just a profound and terrible certainty. "What the hell is wrong with this guy?" one of them muttered, shifting his feet. 2. The leader's smirk faltered. He took a half step back, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He reached instinctively toward the heavy chain hanging from his belt. A mistake. I didn't say 3. The world didn't explode in a flurry of motion. It was the opposite, for me, time compressed and slowed to a crawl. I saw everything, the glint of the sun on a chrome handlebar, a bead of sweat rolling down the leader's temple. the slight twitch in his hand as he decided to swing the chain. It was all the information I needed. My father was a man of quiet strength. He never spoke much about Vietnam. You saw it in the way he carried himself, in the far-off look that sometimes came into his eyes when he thought no one was watching. He taught me how to fix an engine, how to read the weather, and how to tell a good man from a bad one. You watch their hands, Jake, he'd said once, while we were working on his old Ford F-150. And you watch their eyes. They'll tell you everything you need to know before a word is spoken. That morning, we were under the hood of that same truck. It was our ritual whenever I was home on leave. The smell of oil and gasoline, the satisfying clink of a wrench on steel, that was our church. He was telling me a story about his first car, a '57 Chevy, when the coughing started. It wasn't his usual rasp, this was different. A deep, wet, ragged sound that clawed its way out of his chest. He staggered back from the truck, one hand on the fender for support, the other pressed to his chest. His face, normally tanned and weathered, went slack and gray. "Dad," I rushed to his side, grabbing his arm. "Dad, what is it?" He couldn't speak, he just pointed to his chest, his eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen in him before. Not in all my years, he was suffocating, drowning on dry land. The next few minutes were a blur of controlled panic. I got him gently to the ground, placed him in the recovery position, and dialed 911. My voice on the phone was calm, clear, giving our location and his symptoms with the detached precision of a field report. But inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The ambulance arrived in what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than 7 minutes. As they loaded him, his eyes found mine. He gave a weak shake of his head, a silent apology for being a burden. I just gripped his hand tighter. "Not on my watch, old man," I whispered. "Not on my watch." Now, standing on that sun-blasted stretch of highway, those words echoed in my head. "Not on my watch." The biker leader swung the chain. It was a clumsy, telegraphed arc, meant more for intimidation than actual combat. I moved inside the swing, the heavy links whistling past my ear. My left hand shot out, not in a punch, but with fingers stiffened like a spear. The target was the cluster of nerves just below his floating ribs. It wasn't a knockout blow, it was a shut-down command. His breath exploded from his lungs in a sharp, agonized grunt. The big man folded in on himself, his eyes wide with shock and pain. As he doubled over, my right knee came up, connecting solidly with the side of his jaw. The crack was audible over the hum of the traffic on the other side of the median. He dropped like a sack of cement, unconscious before he hit the ground. One down. The other two were frozen for a split second, their brains struggling to process what had just happened. That was all the time I needed. I pivoted on my heel, closing the distance to the one on my right. He was reaching inside his leather vest, probably for a knife or a pistol. My first strike was a palm heel to his nose. Bone and cartilage gave way with a sickening crunch. His head snapped back, eyes watering, his intentions forgotten in a wave of blinding pain. Before he could recover, I hooked my leg behind his, sweeping his feet out from under him. He went down hard, his head bouncing off the asphalt with a hollow thunk. Down. The last one was smarter, or maybe just more cowardly. He had backed away, pulling a long, wicked-looking trench knife from a sheath on his belt. "Stay back," he snarled, waving the blade in a clumsy figure-8 pattern. "I'll gut you, man, I swear to God." I didn't stop moving towards him. My pace was slow, deliberate, unhurried. "You're holding it wrong," I said, my voice still calm. "You'll break your wrist if you actually hit something." That small comment, that piece of detached analysis, broke his nerve. His eyes darted from me to his fallen comrades, then back to me. He saw no path to victory. He saw only pain. He feinted a lunge, a desperate, panicked move. I didn't fall for it. As he pulled the knife back, I exploded forward. My left hand deflected his knife arm, redirecting the blade harmlessly past my body. My right hand clamped onto his wrist like a vice. I twisted. He screamed as the bones in his forearm ground against each other. The knife clattered to the pavement. I didn't let go. I continued the motion, using his own momentum to spin him around and slam him face first into the side of the ambulance. I drove a knee into the back of his thigh, buckling his leg, and pinned him there. The entire fight had taken less than 10 seconds. The ambulance driver and the young paramedic were staring, their mouths agape. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of the bikers still on his bike, the one who had been guarding the SUV parked behind them, fumbling with his phone, his face a mask of terror. I leaned in close to the man pinned against the metal wall, my mouth next to his ear. "Who sent you?" I whispered, my voice a venomous hiss. "Why are you here?" "Go to hell," he wheezed. I applied more pressure to his wrist. He shrieked, a high, thin sound of pure agony. "I've already been there," I said. "It's your turn." "Who sent you?" "Thorn," he finally choked out, tears and snot running down his face. "Marcus Thorn, he's the hospital administrator. We were just supposed to send a message, scare some doc who was gonna talk." Thorn, the name registered, filed away for later. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered. I released the biker, and he slid down the side of the ambulance into a whimpering heap on the ground. I kicked his knife away, sending it skittering under one of the motorcycles. I turned to the last biker, the one still on his bike by the black SUV. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Move them," I said. It wasn't a request. He scrambled off his bike, his hand shaking so badly he could barely stand. He frantically dragged one of the motorcycles out of the way. The paramedic, shaken from his stupor, jumped out and helped him move the second one. In less than a minute, the path was clear. I didn't give them a second glance. I climbed back into the ambulance, the door sliding shut behind me, sealing out the chaos. My knuckles were scraped and bleeding. My adrenaline was pumping, but my focus was singular. I sat down next to my father and took his hand again. It was still cold. "It's okay, Dad," I said, my voice now thick with an emotion I couldn't afford to show a moment before. "We're moving. We're gonna get you there." The ambulance lurched forward, its siren wailing with renewed urgency. As we sped towards the hospital entrance, I looked back through the rear window. The bikers were scattered on the asphalt like broken toys. My war was over, for now. But I knew, with a cold, hard certainty, another one was just beginning. The ambulance screamed into the bay of the San Miguel emergency room, stopping with a jerk that felt like a final, desperate gasp. Before it was even fully stopped, the rear doors flew open. A swarm of people in scrubs and white coats descended, their voices a cacophony of urgent, clipped commands. "Pulmonary distress, 68-year-old male, BP is dropping. SATs are in the low 80s, our paramedic shouted, rattling off the vital signs as they deftly transferred my father to a waiting gurney. I was swept along in their wake, a piece of driftwood in a powerful current. We moved through a set of double doors, down a brightly lit corridor that smelled of bleach and quiet desperation. I tried to keep my hand on my father's shoulder, a silent anchor in the storm, but the pace was too fast. "Sir, you have to wait here," a nurse said, her hand gently but firmly on my chest. "We'll take it from here. We'll do everything we can." The gurney disappeared through another set of doors, this one marked trauma-restricted access. The door swung shut, the small windows offering only a brief, distorted glimpse of the controlled chaos within before they closed completely. And then silence. The sudden quiet was deafening. The adrenaline that had surged through me on the highway drained away, leaving a hollow, trembling emptiness in its place. My scraped knuckles throbbed. My shirt was sticking to my back with sweat. I leaned against the cool, sterile wall, the strength suddenly gone from my legs. A Navy SEAL is never helpless. That's what they teach you. You always have a weapon, even if it's just your mind. You always have a mission. You always have a way out. But in that hallway, staring at a closed door, I was utterly, completely helpless. My training, my skills, my entire life's experience, it was all useless. I couldn't breach that door. I couldn't neutralize the enemy on the other side. The enemy was inside my father's own body, a relentless, invisible insurgency. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold linoleum floor, my head in my hands. The image of the bikers, the arrogance in their eyes, the casual cruelty in their laughter, it burned in my mind. They hadn't just blocked a road, they had stolen time. Precious seconds and minutes that my father didn't have to spare. And for what? To scare some doc. It was a level of selfish depravity that was almost incomprehensible. Time stretched and warped in that hallway. Every clatter of a cart, every distant page over the intercom, made my head snap up. Nurses and doctors bustled past, their faces grim masks of professional focus. None of them were for me. I was just another piece of waiting room furniture, another face in the gallery of anxious loved ones. Finally, after what could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours, the trauma doors swung open. A doctor, his green scrubs dark with sweat, his mask hanging around his neck, walked out. He looked exhausted. He scanned the hallway, and his eyes landed on me. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "My father," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "Sam Riley." The doctor gave me a weary, sympathetic look. "I'm Dr. Evans. Your father is stable, for now." A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. "Stable. We've got him intubated and on a ventilator. It's doing the breathing for him," he explained, his voice low. His lungs were filling with fluid. We were able to clear them, but the strain on his heart was immense. "He's not out of the woods, not by a long shot. The next 24 hours are critical." He paused, looking me straight in the eye. "I'm not going to lie to you. You got him here just in the nick of time. Another 10 minutes on that highway, and this would be a very different conversation." 10 minutes, the words hung in the air like a death sentence that had been narrowly commuted. The time we'd lost fighting with those thugs, 10 minutes. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Can I see him? He's being moved to the ICU. Give the nurses about 30 minutes to get him settled, then you can go in." But only for a few minutes. He patted my shoulder, a gesture of professional comfort that did little to ease the cold knot of rage tightening in my stomach. As he walked away, I pulled out my phone. The name the biker had given me echoed in my mind. Thorne. Marcus Thorne. Hospital administrator. This wasn't just a random act of thuggery. This was connected, this was organized, and it happened right here, at the one place that was supposed to be a sanctuary for the sick and dying. My thumb hovered over my contacts. I scrolled past names that were a litany of my other life. Frogman, Axe, Preacher. I stopped on one, Ghost. Marcus Ghost Ivanov. We'd been through the Green Team and half a dozen deployments together. He'd left the teams 2 years ago and started a private security and cyber intel firm. If anyone could navigate the digital shadows and find what was hidden, it was Ghost. I pressed the call button. He answered on the second ring. "Ripper." His voice was calm, steady. "Everything all right? You're not supposed to be stateside for another week." "Ghost, I need a favor, a big one, off the books." There was no hesitation. "Name it." "San Miguel Medical Center. The hospital administrator is a guy named Marcus Thorne. I need to know everything about him. Finances, connections, who he talks to, what he had for breakfast. Everything. And I need it yesterday." I heard the quiet tapping of a keyboard. "You got it," Ghost said. "This sound personal." "They almost killed my father," I said, the words coming out like chips of ice. The tapping stopped. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. When Ghost spoke again, his voice had lost its casual tone. It was the voice I remembered from pre-mission briefings. Cold, focused, and lethal. "Consider it done, brother. I'll turn over every rock. If this Thorne character has a skeleton in his closet, I'll find it, catalog its bones, and send you a full forensic report. Thanks, Ghost. Just keep your head down, Jake," he warned. "You're in my world now, and it's a different kind of jungle." I hung up and looked back at the trauma doors. My mission had changed. Step 1 was my father's survival. That was in the hands of the doctors. Step 2 was mine. I was going to find out why this happened. And I was going to rip out the rot that had allowed it to. The hunt was on. 30 minutes later, I was standing by my father's bedside in the ICU. The room was a forest of blinking machines and transparent tubes. The only sounds were the rhythmic hiss and click of the ventilator, and the steady, monotonous beep of the heart monitor. It was a fragile, artificial life they had built around him. He looked smaller in the bed, lost amidst the sheets and wires. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful in a medically induced slumber. I reached out and took his hand. It was warmer now. I stood there for a long time, just watching the rise and fall of his chest, a movement that was not his own. This man, my anchor, my hero, he was now at the mercy of a machine. And the machine was at the mercy of the people in this hospital. The same hospital run by the man who had nearly signed his death warrant on a stretch of asphalt. As I left the ICU, my phone buzzed, a text from Ghost. Got him, it's dirty. Dirtier than you think. Sending encrypted file. A moment later, a file appeared. I walked to a deserted corner of the waiting room and opened it. And as I read, the rage in my stomach solidified into something cold and hard and sharp. Ghost was thorough. The file was a deep dive into Marcus Thorne's life. On the surface, he was a pillar of the community. Charity events, glowing newspaper profiles, a loving family. But beneath that polished veneer was a cesspool. Ghost had peeled it all back, bank records from offshore accounts. Encrypted text messages, a web of shell corporations. The picture it painted was sickening. Thorne wasn't just a corrupt administrator. He was a drug kingpin operating under the cover of a medical license. San Miguel Medical Center wasn't just a hospital. It was the hub of a massive illegal opioid distribution ring. Thorne was using his position to divert huge quantities of pharmaceuticals, falsifying records, and selling them on the street. And his muscle, his distribution network, the Iron Vipers MC. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The bikers weren't there to scare a doctor. They were there to protect a shipment. The doctor they were meant to intimidate, a doctor Maurice Thorne had planned to meet with, was an oncologist named Dr. Ramirez who had discovered discrepancies in the pharmacy's inventory and was threatening to go to the board. The bikers blocking the emergency lane was a classic power play: create chaos, show everyone who was in charge, and ensure no one interfered with Thorne's meeting where he was going to silence the doctor one way or another. My father's ambulance hadn't just been an inconvenience to them. It had been a direct threat to their entire criminal enterprise. And they had been willing to let him die to protect it. The file contained one last, chilling detail. A transcript of a text message sent from Thorne to the Iron Vipers president just 20 minutes before our ambulance was stopped. ER approach, keep it locked down. No interruptions, none. Handle any interference with extreme prejudice. Extreme prejudice, a military term, a license to kill. Thorne hadn't just been negligent, he had given a direct order that resulted in my father nearly dying. This was no longer just about reckless endangerment, this was attempted murder. I closed the file, my hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. I had their motive, I had their methods, I had the proof. Ghost had given me the targeting data. Now, it was time to execute the mission. I walked to the hospital directory on the wall. My eyes scanned the list of names and departments, and then I found it. Marcus Thorne, Hospital Administrator, Executive Suite, 5th floor. The 5th floor was another world. The frantic energy of the was replaced by a hushed, corporate reverence. Plush carpets muffled my footsteps. The walls were lined with expensive, abstract art. It didn't feel like a hospital. It felt like the headquarters of a predator. Thorne's office was at the end of the hall, behind a set of large oak doors. A secretary, polished and professional, sat at a desk outside. "Can I help you?" she asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm here to see Mr. Thorne." "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but he'll want to see me." I didn't wait for her to argue. I walked past her desk and pushed open the heavy doors to Thorne's office. The room was vast. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window with a panoramic view of the city. A massive mahogany desk sat in the center of the room, an emperor's throne, and behind it sat Marcus Thorne. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair, an expensive suit, and a condescending smile that looked permanently affixed to his face. He was on the phone. "Who the hell are you?" he said, his eyes flashing with annoyance as he saw me. He spoke into the phone. "Hold on, Charles. I have some trash to take out." He put the phone down and glared at me. "My secretary has paid a great deal of money to keep people like you out of my office. You have 10 seconds to explain yourself before I have security throw you out on your ear." I walked slowly towards his desk, my footsteps silent on the thick rug. I stopped on the other side of the massive desk, placing my hands flat on its polished surface. "My father is Sam Riley," I said, my voice quiet. "He's a patient in your ICU. He was brought in this afternoon in critical condition. He almost didn't make it." Thorne leaned back in his leather chair, a look of theatrical sympathy on his face. "I'm very sorry to hear that. Our staff is the best in the state, I assure you. He's in good hands. He gestured towards the door. Now, if you'll excuse me. He almost didn't make it, I repeated, cutting him off, because a gang of thugs wearing Iron Viper's colors blocked the emergency lane for 15 minutes. They were acting on your orders. The condescending smile vanished from Thorne's face. It was replaced by a cold, reptilian stillness. I have no idea what you're talking about. I think you should leave. Now. I have a text message, I continued, my voice dropping even lower. Sent from your phone, to the Viper's president. The words you used were extreme prejudice. Does that ring a bell? Thorne's face went pale. The mask of civility had cracked, and for a fleeting second, I saw the rat-like creature underneath. He stared at me, his mind racing, calculating. He was trying to figure out who I was, how I knew. He chose to bluff. He let out a short, sharp laugh. You're insane. You come into my office, making wild, unsubstantiated accusations. You have no idea who you're dealing with. He reached for the intercom on his desk. I'm calling security. And then my lawyers are going to tear you apart for slander. Don't bother, I said. They're a little tied up right now. As I said it, I pulled my phone from my pocket and placed it on the desk between us. I hit play on a video file. It was security camera footage from the hospital's loading dock, timestamped just 5 minutes earlier. It showed a half-dozen members of the Iron Vipers, the ones not lying on the highway, being put in handcuffs by uniformed police officers. Thorne stared at the screen, his jaw slack. How? While you were building your little empire of poison, I explained, you forgot the first rule of warfare. Know your enemy. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. You didn't just almost kill a sick old man. You almost killed the father of a Master Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy SEALs, and you did it on his watch. Panic, raw and pure, flooded his eyes. The Emperor was naked. His kingdom was crumbling. He finally understood that I wasn't some grieving son looking for a settlement. I was the consequence of his actions. You can't prove anything, he hissed, scrambling for a foothold. It's my word against a deadbeat bikers. This is my hospital, my city. It's not your hospital, a new voice said from the doorway. We both turned. Standing there was a man in a rumpled detective suit. Behind him were 2 more uniformed officers. I recognized him from a joint task force briefing years ago, Detective Miller. An old-school cop ghost had told me was one of the few straight arrows left in a corrupt department. It's the property of the people of this city, Miller said, his eyes hard as he looked at Thorne. And you, Mr. Thorne, are under arrest for conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, racketeering, and 22 counts of attempted murder. 1 for every patient in every ambulance that couldn't get through your little blockade today. Thorne stared at the police officers, then back at me. The fight went out of him. He slumped into his chair, a broken man in a $1,000 suit. His empire, built on pain and greed, had been decapitated in a matter of hours. Cuff him, Miller said, his voice ringing with satisfaction. As the officers moved in, I turned and walked out of the office without a backward glance. My mission was complete. The rot had been excised. Now, I could go back to the only thing that truly mattered. I took the elevator down from the pristine heights of the 5th floor, back to the raw, honest reality of the ICU, back to my father. The fall of Marcus Thorne and the Iron Vipers was swift and spectacular. The story dominated the local news for weeks. A beloved hospital administrator, unmasked as a ruthless drug lord. A decorated Navy SEAL, home on leave, who single-handedly dismantled a criminal empire to save his father. The media tried to turn me into a hero, a vigilante in jeans and a t-shirt. They camped outside the hospital, hoping for an interview. I ignored them all. The only battle I cared about had already been won. The war that mattered now was being fought in a quiet room on the 3rd floor, where a tired old warrior was slowly, painstakingly, fighting his way back to the world of the living. Days turned into a week. My father was moved from the ICU to a regular room. He was still weak, the ventilator gone, but an oxygen tube a constant companion. But his eyes were clear again. The stubborn, cantankerous spark was back. The first time he was able to speak, his voice a dry whisper, he looked at me and said, "Heard you cause some trouble." I just smiled and squeezed his hand. Learned from the best. He was quiet for a long time, watching the city lights twinkle to life outside his window. "They're calling you a hero on the news," he finally said. "Don't believe everything you hear," I replied, adjusting his pillows. "I do," he said, his voice suddenly firm. He turned his head and looked right at me, his gaze intense. "A hero isn't the guy who is strongest in a fight. It's the one who fights for someone who can't fight for themselves. I was proud of you the day you earned that trident, Jake, but I've never been prouder of you than I am right now." Tears welled in my eyes. In all my life, through all the medals and commendations, those were the words I had always wanted to hear. A month later, I was pushing my father's wheelchair out the front doors of San Miguel Medical Center. He was thin, and he still got tired easily, but he was alive. The sun was warm on our faces. The air was clean. It was a beautiful day. As we waited for the car, he looked up at the hospital, which was now under new, state-appointed management. "Funny," he said, "the world keeps turning. Bad guys go to jail, good guys get to go home. Sometimes you just need someone to give the damn thing a push in the right direction." I looked down at the man who had taught me everything about strength, honor, and sacrifice. The lines on his face were deeper, but his eyes were bright. He had survived. We had survived. My time as ASEAL had taught me how to fight enemies in faraway lands, in the dark corners of the world. But this taught me that the most important battles are often fought right here, at home. They aren't for territory or for intel. They're for the people we love. They're for the moments we get to share with them. They are for the golden hours of our own lives. The fight on that highway wasn't about vengeance. It was about giving my father more time. Time to see another sunrise. Time to work on his old truck. Time to sit with his son and just be. And in the end, that's the only mission that truly matters. The story you just heard is a reminder that the battlefield isn't always in some distant country. Sometimes it's a hospital hallway, sometimes it's a stretch of highway, and the warriors fighting on it aren't always in uniform. True strength isn't about how hard you can hit, it's about who you're willing to protect. It's about a son's love for his father, and the extraordinary lengths he'll go to in order to defend him. If this story of unwavering resolve and family devotion resonated with you, let us know in the comments below. What does being a protector mean to you? Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that the greatest acts of heroism often happen far from the spotlight. And please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss another story that reminds us of the strength of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.